webinar from Logistics Compare. I'm really pleased you're all with us this afternoon. There'll be a few more people joining us, but we're going to get started as we've got 4 speakers to get through in our hour. We want this to be a highly interactive session, so please do put questions into the chat so that I can see them and I can ask our panelists as we go through the questions. Really good to have 4 fantastic speakers. We're going to look and explore the option of whether automation in logistics is now a viable choice, or is it because of the fact of what's happening with the employment environment that actually having people in your environment makes more sense than having automation, or is it a mixture of both? Also, how do we stay competitive coming out of the COVID situation to make sure that logistics is a viable option for businesses to be safe and secure in a financial way? So it gives me great pleasure to hand over first off to Tony Hughes, who's going to introduce himself and do his presentation.
Thank you, Sue. I'll try and share my screen. Do you have that?
Yeah, we got it.
Full screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony Hughes. I work as a senior consultant for Davis & Robson, a specialist supply chain and logistics consultancy business based in Northampton. I've over 30 years experience now in logistics and supply chain operations. I've worked with most of the leading third-party logistics providers. I've also worked for an integration automation supplier, and recently worked with as a consultant for a warehouse simulation software company. With Davis & Robson, we do a lot of warehouse projects, typically including layout design, equipment and process evaluation, warehouse design, resource planning, and sometimes we even help customers identify a new facility and help them with the transition into the new facility. So that's me. I just wanted to say about last webinar that we did. We came to a few conclusions. One of those conclusions was that the labour costs are likely to increase as we move forward. We've got the impact of the minimum wage to consider. Also, companies are paying competitive pay rates to retain staff. We also concluded that Brexit would have an impact on labour availability moving forward. COVID-19 has impacted on the efficiency of our operations. Social distancing has caused us to become a little bit less efficient, and we've also got hygiene and other considerations to take into account. The other thing that we also concluded was that online sales was likely to increase moving forward, and the high street retailers are under severe pressure. So that was where we came to last time. I just wanted to talk about, as a consultant, what we would actually do to assess a warehouse operation. So this is the evaluation process, and the steps we'd take to evaluate if an automated system would be advantageous. The first part is very detailed analysis of the current operation. So this is a data gathering exercise that we go through, and this is something I'll cover off in the next sections. One of the things I like to understand from a company when I work with them also is, why are they looking at automation? Is it because they want speed and efficiency through the operation? And whether that means a result in less labour or less MHE? Or do they want something that's more accurate and provides less opportunity for human error? Or maybe are they looking for a dense storage solution? I think Adam from Swisslog might tell us later that his AutoStore solution provides very dense storage. I worked with one company, and they looked at automations, and it meant that they didn't need to move site and relocate, so there was a big cost saving, which was a real advantage to them. And to finish the presentation, I just want to talk about the evaluation process I like to follow, just to make sure we've covered everything off. One of the things I like to do is actually map out all of the flows through a warehouse. This is what I call a material flow diagram. All of the vehicles that arrive into the warehouse, number of pallets received, number of pallets processed through each of the functional areas. So we receive pallets, we put them away, we perform some replenishment, we perform some picking, and so on. So I'd like to understand the numbers that actually take place in the warehouse. Also like to understand, what do we actually store in the warehouse? What are the receipt volumes? When are they received? Also, about the storage requirements as well in the warehouse. You know, what are we actually storing? Are we storing pallets? Are we storing cartons? Are we storing totes? How long are items stored in the warehouse? And you know, what items are considered fast and slow moving, and how long are they stored for? Also look at the product characteristics as well, the weights and dimensions of the product. If there's any special storage requirements that we need to consider, whether there's any pallet overhang or any heavy items, anything that we need to do particular to a certain product group, whether there's any tint or odour that sometimes comes from products as well. And also maybe the picking characteristics, whether we have to adopt first in, first out, or first expiry, first out, those kind of items as well. The other things I like to work with a company and understand is the growth forecast. Typically, companies will have a forecast as to what they might look for in the future in terms of volume of sales, and need to understand that by product group or by order type, and so on. And finally, look at the seasonality. Typically, we'll take 12 months of stock holding data and analyse that through a data set to understand if there's any seasonality, maybe whether there's a receipt and stock build in advance of Christmas, or any other seasonality. Maybe I've just worked with an Asian food company and they had peaks before Ramadan. So that's the inventory. Once I've got all of the data, I like to create a resource model. It's amazing how many companies I work with that don't actually know what their KPIs are. You know, how many pallets an hour do they process through receipt? How many cases an hour do they pick, and so on. It's unusual that for me that companies don't know that. But what I look at with the resource model is once I've got the material flow, I can then assign a KPI to all of the key tasks and work out how many people they need in the operation based upon an average level of activity. Okay. Another thing we look at is the picking data. I use a tool called Pareto, which is the 80-20 statistical tool. And I use this to try and understand where the picking activity is coming from. Typically in a warehouse, 80% of the pick comes from about 20% of the product lines. And we call these the A items. These are the A fast-moving items in the warehouse. The slower items are the B items, and they will represent maybe 60% of the SKUs. And then the final items are the C items, which are the very slow moving items in the warehouse. Interesting, what we also look at is within the A's, maybe 10% of the SKUs will actually represent 50% of the sales. So I kind of class these as the super A's. The super A's sometimes aren't really ideal for, you might be able to do something outside of automation, maybe have some pallet live or something like that. So we look at that. Also with the picking data, I like to understand what different types of orders are there and what's the characteristics around those orders. Are there any single SKU orders? Are there multi-SKU orders? Single SKU orders, you could actually do a batch pick and maybe do a batch packing operation, which might affect whether automation would be a viable solution. Multi-SKU orders certainly lend themselves to automation. I like to understand the number of units per line that are being picked as well, and understand whether it's a fast or slow pick, and the number of lines per order. One of the tools I like to create as well is a day in the life of diagram. This is used just to give me a visual representation when I'm engaging with a customer to understand what happens when in the warehouse. Typically we have the unloading. Generally it takes place in the morning. The goods in activity takes place in the morning. Outbound activity takes place in the evening. I like to overlay this with the labour shifts. So maybe an AM shift, a PM shift and a night shift. I like to confirm with customers also what time the orders get dropped into the warehouse management system. This particular example shows a company that had 3 different pick waves. So their orders were released gradually through the day. So some were released at, I think, about 8 a.m., some were released at 10 a.m., some were released at maybe 2 p.m. And consequently, those orders were picked and dispatched in different dispatch waves as well, different loading waves. Also, I'd like to understand, whether there's a split between retail orders and whether there's a split between online orders as well. So once we've actually got all the data and understand the operation, there's a few things I like to see before we can make a final decision as to whether automation is the correct route for customers. One of those is the return on investment model. So on the screen, you'll see a model where we've populated it with the costs of all the equipment, the investment costs. And this is used then to determine, with some efficiency gains, at what point after the introduction of the equipment would we actually start seeing a return on the investment. Other things I like to see is a detailed project plan showing how we might transition from an existing operation to a new automated solution. Obviously, companies may need still to operate at the same time. Also, I like to understand that any solution needs to be flexible to meet the future demands as product changes and demand cycle changes, order profiles might change. So I'd like to understand what flexibility any automated solution might have. I also like to create a new material flow and also a resource model. When we introduce automation into a warehouse, we're going to introduce new tasks. So whereas before things may be put into pallet racking, put into shelving, now we might be feeding an automated machine. So I need to understand what the productivity rates are associated with those tasks. Understand the overall resource that's required to perform once we go live with the automation. And finally, I like to understand the layouts. What does this storage capacity, how is that impacted with the introduction of the new facilities and the new equipment? Interesting thing, I found that picking is typically 70% of all the labour, 60 to 70% of the labour used in the warehouse. The receiving and loading times generally take up the remaining time and replenishment, but picking is 60 to 70%. So this is probably the area where most people are looking for automation to offer them benefits. So there's a lot of detail required to understand the picking solutions and how they will actually give you the benefits and the efficiency gains. Also consider how you treat the super A items which we discovered in the Pareto analysis, the B items and the C items. So to conclude the presentation, I just wanted to say that moving forward, we anticipate that there'll be reduced availability of labour and there'll be an increased cost. Moving forward, I think companies' efficiency and cost control is going to be key for them to remain competitive. I also like to say that people need to review what they do today as well. Make your operation as efficient as it can be today before you consider automation. It may be that what you do today is inefficient and consequently there's big gains to be made from just reviewing the layout or the processes. Just a couple of other comments. The cost of automation is generally coming down. The manufacture of it has increased and I think some of the software costs have reduced. So the return on investment now is easier to justify, especially with increased wage costs. I'd also suggest maybe engaging with a limited number of suppliers, get a short list of preferred suppliers and talk to them. Be open to ideas. What you think might be the solution you want might actually be different, and different suppliers have different solutions for different problems. Obviously, any solution needs to be flexible and scalable as the business change. And also any solution needs to be able to cover any peak levels of demand, Black Friday, Christmas, and so on. And my final comment is if you need any independent advice, don't be afraid to ask for it. Okay, so that finishes my presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tony. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
What we're going to do is save all the questions to the end, but as I said, do feel free to put them into the chat as they come into your head then we can ask it of all the panelists. So our next speaker is Gary Rees, who is the Managing Director at Synergy Retail Support. And Gary was really the person that led off on a lot of this for us, because the whole idea from Gary came about the fact that he had some issues in finding the right labour for his warehouse, and we thought this would make really good topic for this seminar. So Gary, over to you.
Hi Sue, thank you, and hi everyone. I think, although I have a small presentation, I think I'll probably just quickly spin everyone through what we do, just 3 or 4 minutes, I think, because Tony's covered quite a lot of the points, and I think give everyone else a chance to speak. So we're very seriously looking at automation now. The backdrop is volumes are ×2 still from Black Friday, although it's come down marginally, and we're in a position now where, with social distancing, which we think is probably going to continue the next 6 months or a year, that we're struggling to get enough people into our building, giving them enough space. And also what's happening now is the cost of labour. We're based in Northampton, and whilst we're not the biggest employer, we're around 300 people.
That's correct. You are correct.
Oh, sorry. And we're working across 24 hours, 7 days a week at the moment. So what we're currently doing, our business predominantly is we're an e-commerce fulfillment business, and we're probably one of the more progressive companies. We're very well invested in tech, and we're trying to set our bar as close to Amazon as possible in terms of service. So as many aspects of fulfillment and bringing work to the pack benches as possible, we're beginning to look at the moment. The only automation we've really managed to do so far is just some simple conveyors, which is just better than nothing and the quickest, easiest fix. But we're looking at more sophisticated systems. What we're finding is now a lot of warehouses are paying premiums for labour, which is making us uncompetitive because we're on a price per unit, and that's affecting margins. And with Brexit, there's generally going to be less staff around for sure. So where we can supplement with robotics, that will definitely be the route we're going to go as soon as we can figure out the complexities about, that arise from being a true multi-user site, and nothing we do is homogenous. But that's what our challenge and what our plans are. So happy to take any questions later. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Gary. That's brilliant. Really well done. You did mention last time that you were having also problems recruiting, that people from the UK just didn't want to fill the job. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, I mean, that has settled down slightly now because people aren't as anxious about working. So we are recruiting. We are recruiting okay. Certain shifts we're struggling to recruit for, particularly our shift from 2 till 10 at night seems to be the hardest one for us to recruit for. But because a lot of our staff are minimum wage plus a bonus, we're not paying sort of higher premiums at some of the big DCs, like brand owned, brand like Amazon's own DC, they're at liberty to be able to afford bigger bonuses for us. So we're competing against them. But the staff we're getting, a lot of them, English is weaker than it used to be with certain communities, which creates other problems, which means we need to manage and supervise them separately, which then creates, different environments of different cultures, which is absolutely not where we want to be. We want one team, one commonality, everyone just speaking English at work, but it's slightly morphing away from that. But, our obligation right now is to our customers and their customers and to get orders out the door. So we're just doing whatever we need to do that. And we are doing it, but it's not ideal circumstances. Now, obviously, with automation, those problems just will disappear, hopefully.
Brilliant, thank you. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our third speaker, Tony Leach from James Cargo Services, who says you cannot compete with Amazon unless you do this. So over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Sue. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Good, good. So just a brief introduction. Yeah, my name's Tony Leach. I've worked in this industry for far, far too long, probably 15, 20 years now. I started my career in IT, mostly information technology and looking at systems and data flows. And there's such an overlap between the supply chain and data that by default, I kind of entered the logistics and supply chain arena. I mostly worked initially with large multinational logistics and third-party logistics companies, and now a supply chain director at James Cargo. And my role here is to work with a team of international team to ensure that we take customers from factory right the way through to the end consumer. So we look at the global supply chain. Let me just see, sorry, the slide. Okay, so one of the things we like to look at when we're looking at automation especially is what's the trends of the end customer. We like to drive it back from the consumer. So what are the consumers doing? And that usually dictate the behavior of the supply chain. So, you know, one thing is a trend, as we all know, is internet shopping or connectivity via smartphones, via Alexa voice speaking devices. You know, more and more people now have access to the internet. It's very user friendly, and that will relate in obviously the transition of orders. So just that pure accessibility. And then if you do have a COVID-19 situation where people are reluctant to go out or even under legislation can't get to the shops, they actually increases, you know, a spike in orders because that is a marketplace that they can access. So we kind of look at that consumer environment and see how that drives backwards. And then you cannot deny what is the Amazon effect as such, because what Amazon has done is created you know, disrupted the retail marketplace and the supply chain marketplace. You know, they do equate for a huge volume in terms of, you know, 65.5% of online sales globally, really, and that's put pressure on us as service providers, and it's also put pressure on the retail sector as a whole to be able to react to that, because when you've got a marketplace that's doing next day delivery, same day delivery, picking on time and in full, and delivering a customer experience that on the whole is very good, then obviously we as a business in a way have to react to that and service our retail customers or service our customers to meet those service levels. And if you look at the global marketplace as well, there's other marketplaces such as Tmall in China, you know, ASOS that we're probably all familiar with. Believe it or not, ASOS is a marketplace in many ways. We can, you know, other companies sell brands there, and there's a whole host of other ones in all sorts of different product types and different areas. So we have to be able to react with Amazon, and so do our customers. And that's where what we call bricks and clicks comes in. And what I mean by bricks and clicks is that there's now omni-channel marketplaces. So, you know, to compete, big box retailers, shall we say, have to have maybe a presence on a marketplace like Amazon. They might have their own kind of, you know, branded store within an Amazon marketplace, their own website, and they need to be able to compete, and they need to be able to fulfill orders very quickly. And as this marketplace becomes flooded, and as more and more businesses are selling online in the digital, that puts huge pressure on us as a third-party logistics provider. And we need to manage not only our customers' expectation, but we also have to deliver on that customer experience towards the end customer. And also we look at it through a global lens as well, because, you know, you can see that actually China has a higher spend in terms of internet purchases than the United States. And United Kingdom is very strong globally. I mean, you know, we're sitting in third place, so we have a very strong market. But we have to look at things like customs regimes. We have to look at Brexit. You know, Brexit has changed the way we do business. We have to have that flexibility to be able to maybe we have a warehouse now and a DC in the Netherlands because that de-risks Brexit. We have German customers that are moving inventory into the UK because they want to service the UK locally, and they don't want to have some of the customs regimes that could be introduced. So you can see that we have to also look at it from a global picture, because an event like Brexit and the change in the way that we do business with our European neighbours can actually have an impact on the supply chain and the way in which we manage stock within the warehouse. So what the underlying message of this is that we have to be able to build capacity, scalability and flexibility, because these changes, these global events are beyond our control, and we have to be then in a place where we can look at the infrastructures that can support that. And for me, there's two types of system automation, and there's system and there's physical automation. So there's two types. And the system automation is quite complex. You know, there's a number of systems that are within there. There's there's ERP systems, there's web carts, there's marketplaces, there's digital marketing. You know, there's bid engines, there's finance systems, there's processing payment engines, web stores, you know, digital markets. There's all of those systems are encompassed. At some point they link. And what we want to be able to do is drive that data. And it was a bit like what Tony was saying earlier. Drive that data, because what impact is that physically going to have on the warehouse? How are we going to receive that order data? When are we going to receive it? How are we going to process it? And we're talking huge amounts of data as well. And then we have to link that to our physical automation, or we have to link that to our human kind of interaction as well. So we have to take all of that data and say, this now needs to be a workflow in the warehouse that's achievable to process those orders within the KPIs or the targets that we've been set. So I think it's important that when people talk about automation, they often think about just the physical. They think about a robot, or they think about a conveyor, or they think about a sortation system or a packing system. But it's the data that drives that. And we have to look at both aspects, and then we have to say, is automation a fit for our business? Does it fit the product? Does it fit the data type? Is it going to be a return on investment? Is it going to improve what we're doing? So why would we automate, or why are we going down the road of automating our warehouses? Well, it does fit our product types. Most of our product types are kind of fashion items or fast moving consumer goods or consumer electronics. So, you know, they fit within a courier pouch, you know, they fit within a small parcel network, and it's very high volume pick and pack environment. So the first thing we need to look at then is to say, well, look, within the infrastructures that we have, within the warehouses we have, within the systems that we have, and within the capabilities, what can we do to improve efficiency? You know, improve throughput of put away, because we have to put that stock into a location to pick it again. How can we have less touch points? How can we have less travel? And that's very important, because when we first opened initial warehouses years ago, we had some pickers walking 14, 15 miles a day, and that's just not sustainable. That's just not fair to expect your staff to be able to do that. So even just travel within the warehouse, it's one touch point, and you go from walking 15 miles a day to walking half a mile a day. It's a massive difference. So there's all of these elements that we need to look at, including integration and obviously reducing staff training as well. There has to be a human interaction between machinery and technology and humans, and we have to make that training cycle very short, and obviously also improve security as well in the way in which we hold our product, because it's higher value. We want to reduce our operating costs. Ultimately, we're a business, you know, and what we want to do is ensure that overall we're getting the best bang for our buck. So we want to reduce our, you know, potentially reduce some of our staffing level, because labor is the most expensive and challenging aspect of the warehouse. However, we can lower energy costs as well. Machines don't need lights, they don't need heat necessarily. You know, we can position machines and work overnight while the rest of us are sleeping. And then we look at obviously our return on investment. It has to be scalable. And I'll give you an example of why it has to be scalable. Most logistics companies at the moment are handling huge volumes of PPE for government organizations or for pharmaceutical or just for the general public. And that has flooded our supply chain in terms of we are handling millions and millions of units of PPE. Now, we didn't plan for that at the beginning of this year. We didn't scope that into our rollout or onboarding those type of businesses. So the fact that we can push that into a more scalable environment and be more reactive is obviously going to help us. And also looking at those trends, you know, we've seen a 20% increases in e-commerce orders due to COVID-19. You know, it's almost like, you know, volumes that we could experience around Christmas time in a seasonal peak. So having that ability to just be that little bit more scalable and being able to look at those omni-channel variations between B2B and B2C is critical. And then finally, we need control. Because if we don't know what the warehouse is doing, if we don't have that end-to-end view of operations, we don't know what throughputs are happening, what outputs are happening, and we want to optimize our workflows and our space usage. And we can have a number of dashboards and a number of visibility tools that ensures that we're actually making the most of the investment and making the most of supporting our people to do their job. And finally, we also want to be able to display that to our customers, because our customers want to know what's going on. They absolutely do. You know, are we hitting our KPIs? Are we fulfilling their customers' expectation? Are we doing what we should be doing as a service provider? So that's really why we look to automate, because it adds a number of benefits to our business in terms of control and efficiency, reduce cost, and scalable and flexibility. However, as Tony said, and I can't emphasize that enough, the product type, the product mix has to be right, and the nature in which we process orders. And I talked a little bit about managing big data, but there is so many systems that we connect into in terms of web carts, in terms of EIP systems, in terms of omni-channel engines, marketplaces, mobile apps, and also directly into some of our customers, obviously, web stores. So we have to take all of that data and we have to apply logic to it. You know, we have to almost do like a sortation for picking methodologies for whether it can be automated or whether it's going to be a physical process. So that's a big part of that job before we then link that and integrate that into our warehouse management systems and into our operational flows. And then that takes us to, this does help our teams to work better. It does improve our efficiency and pick away. And we can look at things like, you know, like what we've got here, where these are robots that bring pick faces to our user. There's no travel, there's a single touch point. It's very visual in terms of pictures. So there's no language barriers with international staff. And it just enables us to facilitate much faster throughput, much faster accuracy, as we would have many sort of waves of warehouse staff potentially traveling around the warehouse. So we're automating that piece, but you have to have that logic at the front to push into here to then make this work, and then to support our staff to be able to work more efficiently and with less energy. And then also we have to look at the consumer experience. And what I mean by that is as well, and this sort of drives back to workflows as well, because we can then pick a lot faster and we can actually pack. And we need to pack in a certain format. We need to label it with a courier label, and it needs to be injected into a, you know, courier carrier network. So if we are picking much faster and we're packing, we have a problem, because then we have one person picking and we have 20 people packing. So then do we need to then look at automation of, we need to now install packaging machines to be able to keep up with the demand of the pickers. And there's certain things in terms of packing that just can't be automated. So there's always going to be that trade-off between automation and between you know, physical staff doing that. And that's important for us, because we have to manage that as well. And we have to manage how that works, because what you don't want to do as well is put too much pressure on people to be out, you know, where they, you know, where you've got too much flow of goods to one section of the warehouse or one particular transactional task. So we have to look at automation across the end-to-end flow as well to ensure that that throughput, because it's no good picking really fast if you can't pack. You're not going to get the throughputs that you need, and you're only going to cause disruption and pain within your warehouse. And then finally as well is that we have the integrations on the outbound. So, you know, small package courier integration is huge for us. The final mile is actually usually the most expensive piece of this supply chain process, even from sourcing to freight. In terms of logistics cost, the final mile. So we have to be able to offer our customers many options. It may be a Royal Mail option, it may be a DPD, a UPS. Internationally, we work with Singapore Post and Aramex and people like this. In the States, obviously UPS. So we have to be able to have the systems that take all of that data again and say, this is the weight of the carton, this is the dimensions, this is what we're putting into that network. And we might do things like rate shopping. So our customer might say, look, I want this service level, but I want what is the cheapest provider. Or, you know, so we can say, okay, we've got 4 options here, and then our systems will actually do that rate check-in and then create the right label and the right process and do the right booking, and then we can obviously sort that and then obviously load those out on the trucks to go into the courier networks. And that can also be driven by service level, because some of our customers say we want absolutely next day delivery or same day delivery for certain products. But however, we don't mind for this particular service level, we don't mind if it's delivered next week. So, you know, we also have to look at the logic of what is a priority order and what is not so much a priority order. And everything goes back to those flows. And then again, a little bit about control. If you've got hundreds of thousands of parcels in various different networks, and you've got pull systems from inventory, what you want to be able to do is have systems that identify which SKUs should be at the front, which SKUs should be accessible for the robots, what are we going to be picking faster, what are the trends for this customer, and then giving them that visibility. And we want to give them that visibility of what product is inbound, what product is inventory available, what inventory has turned, what are fast moving SKUs, commercial information to do any customs clearances if we need to, right the way through to be able to drive down into their live parcels out there in the world saying, how are UPS performing, how are DPD performing, how are Royal Mail performing, is there any bottlenecks, is there any exceptions, and letting their customer service teams be proactive. So you can see how all of these different data and automation elements kind of collide together or overlap together to enable us really to try and keep up with Amazon and the deep investment and pockets that they have. And they do set the benchmark, and it's up to us to do that. And the priority for me really is I see the future of supply chains where humans and machines really do have to work together to raise the bar of productivity and efficiency. And with the exceptional rate of e-fulfillment growth and other factors like we mentioned with COVID-19 and Brexit, it just really highlights that as a logistics provider, service provider, we have to have resilience and flexibility in a very changing kind of global marketplace. And we are constantly under pressure. I'm sure Gary will agree with this as a service provider. We're constantly under pressure to raise the bar from our demanding customers, to do stuff quicker, do stuff accurate, ensure that they're offering the best kind of customer experience that they can offer. So we have to create this infrastructure that's scalable, it's modern, it's future-proof as we possibly can get it, and it also can be deployed rapidly. Because there is, with such as the Brexit scenario, we did have to rapidly open a facility in the Netherlands, and we have to have a global repeatable process, which does break down language barriers and staffing barriers and all of those things, and gives us those workflows that deliver ultimately tangible results for our business. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tony. That was enlightening. Now it gives me pleasure to introduce Adam Fox from Swisslog, who's going to give us some insights that they've noticed over the years, how automation in warehousing has changed, why it needs to be agile and flexible. Over to you now, Adam.
Yeah, I just need Tony to, perfect. Yeah, great.
Okay, yeah, there you go. It should be good now.
So can people see my screen?
Yeah.
Great, excellent. Well, that's fantastic hearing what a two-tone is and Gary's got to say, and I think some of this might be repetition here, so apologies about that. So I'm going to talk to you about agile viable warehouse automation today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Adam Fox. I am the Business Development Manager and Auto Store Specialist for Swisslog UK. Now, we've only got 10 minutes in my allotted time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Swisslog individually, but if you want to visit our website, it's a superb website to see some great case studies and solutions and advice. It's well worth a look. So what I am going to talk about, though, I'm going to go into looking at agile warehouse automation. We've heard a bit about this already. Then I've got a couple of case studies, and I'm going to ask Sue at the end of that, if we've still got time, we'll look at some standardized solutions. So really, we just heard actually from Tony about why people automate, and I'm pleased to say I think some of these answers are very similar, in so much that a big one we're seeing at the moment is people wanting to facilitate social distancing. But probably the big drivers we see is people wanting to reduce labour cost or labour requirement, i.e. they reduce the cost to serve, the cost per pick to be reduced down. Another big driver is reducing the amount of space in which they do a pick-in operation or a storage operation, or getting more into the space they've already got, and that's could be due to a SKU proliferation, something like that. Effectively leveraging the existing facility that an operation has, meaning they don't have to move to a new greenfield site or have an extension. Increased picking speeds is very much a byproduct of automation, and that has some great benefits, including allowing you to have later cutoffs for an operation, increasing that service level, as Tony was talking about, to match the likes of Amazon. Improved pick accuracy, once again, Amazon have a very high bar for that, but improving pick accuracy is very important for our clients, as is reducing damage, because if you think about products that are picked often off a pallet, they fall off, they get crushed. In automated systems, the reduction in damage is very good. So, and some other ones that people often don't think about is things like perpetually inventory counting. And what I mean by that is with automated systems, you can set it up so you're continuously doing a stock take, maybe in a pick process, but people are asked to count things, but it could be that when people have got a bit of time, they click over on a touch screen to do some counting of products that's in stock. And what that means, you don't have to have the inconvenience of a yearly or 2 yearly stock take. And another big one as well, particularly if you've got high volume items, if it's all in an area that's in an automated system, is to improve security and shrinkage. On the other side of the balance, really, I think was covered by Tony, was with automation, some people have a concern that the flexibility in terms of peaks, in terms of changes, and we're all in changes at the minute, in terms of challenges. Other concerns, particularly the smaller and medium organisations, probably think they haven't got the expertise needed to evaluate, to choose and implement automation. ROI came up in previous presentations. It's always difficult to ensure that we reach the ROI threshold, but nowadays there are some very good funding models to turn that from CapEx to OpEx. So, but it is a concern, as is, I think was covered, operational disruption. Some customers are concerned if they implement automation, then this could be difficult. What I wanted to do is just look at what people have in terms of a standard image or a concept of automation. And I think we've all seen them on television, we've all seen them on YouTube, etc. People's traditional view of automation is like you're seeing on the right-hand side there. This is an incredible solution that we're doing at the moment for Nestlé with XPO Logistics. And this is just super automated. It's pallets in at one end and automation looks after everything, and order-friendly pallets out the other end. I won't go into detail exactly what it does, but it's really quite a good stereotype of what people think about automation, that it's a comprehensive solution. Takes a lot of planning, a lot of implementation. It's nearly always a greenfield site or an extension, very much the preserves of large companies, and you do need teams of people to look after this huge machine of complexity to keep it going. What I did want to do was share with you, we got some consultants to go out to the market and say, what do people want from automation, and particularly in this COVID-19 era? And a lot of the things, I'm glad that these echo a lot of the things what Tony previously had on. They want fast paybacks. They want to consider things like leasing and renting. And they want to do this quickly because they see there's opportunities and they need flexibility now and they need to be agile now. They also want things to be installation friendly, i.e. they need to carry on operating and they want to be able to put things in whilst they carry on operating, and also not to have to move to implement automation. A big one actually is they want any automation to be quick to learn, available in different languages, to be very easily adaptable, quick to learn. A biggie I don't think's covered is any solution needs to very seamlessly connect with existing WMS or ERP systems, and it needs to be agile in terms of scalability and modular, so it can extend as PPE requirements are needed and things like that. Facilitate social distancing is once again a big one, and also easy to maintain. I don't think that's come up yet. So that's solutions that can be maintained not with big maintenance staff teams on site, but with perhaps using your own staff and then supported by Swisslog or any other Swisslog hotlines and roving service people. So what solutions fulfill these criteria? Well, is already spoiled my fun and he showed those sort of systems as Tony. It's really robots, autonomous mobile robots, and there's a number of different types. You've seen two types already. One is umpers, not Oompa-Loompas, that meet people in the aisle and go away, take things to dispatch. The other one is the autonomous mobile robots, which you've just seen, and the cube-based systems. So I'm going to focus on the right-hand side two of those and talk a little bit more. First one, our version of autonomous mobile robots is a superb solution called Carry Pick. Tony did cover it, but just to cover it again, what happens with this types of automation is you have racks individual racks of your stored products. And we have fleets or teams of these robots, and they effectively lift up the racks and drive them and drop them at pick stations, which you could see there, operator window. When an operator has done a pick, and one of the benefits of this sort of system is because it's such a large rack, you often get a better, what we'd call hit rate. Means you can probably pick more than one SKU with one rack presentation. Once they've done their picks and confirmed it, that robot will take that rack away, but another robot will have another rack waiting, and it immediately switch it over. So there's this continuous flow of work and a continuous efficiency for pickers. So to give you an idea, benefits of that sort of solution, they're incredibly flexible, that sort of solution that you've seen here on Antonius, in so much that you can store everything in them. You can store small parts, you can have hang-in parts, you can have large BDCs or cases. It just takes everything. Ugly is everything, because it's just really a whole rack size. It's very scalable. If you want to increase the storage in the facility, you just have more racks. If you want to increase the throughput of a facility, you'll have more robots and or more pick stations. So it's incredibly scalable, agile and flexible. It's very modular, nothing's fixed down, so to deploy it is incredibly quick. It's just a case of clearing the area, putting stickers down, building the fencing, pick stations, and everything's delivered, then loaded. And this sort of solution is incredibly robust because there's no single point of failure, as we would call it. I.e., if one robot goes down, that can be taken out of the system. The other robots could take up the slack. Same as pick stations. If one goes down, you can carry on operating. So there's nothing catastrophic. Give you a bit of an idea of how flexible this is, a bit of a case study for you. A company in Germany called Salon Hagel, and surprisingly, Salon Hagel supplies salon supplies, hair care and beauty on an omni-channel basis. They implemented Carry Pick in 2016. They found it a fantastic solution for them, meeting all their requirements, enabling them to give a much bigger service. But they needed much more throughput and storage, even during this COVID time. So just recently, within a matter of weeks, we extended this solution for them. And that was easily done by extending the fencing around the system, supplying them with more racks, more robots. And you can see that's just about doubled in size for them. And you can see on the screen there, Herr Hess was very happy with that. Going to move on to the next mobile robot solution, and for me this is the king of robotics solutions out there, which is AutoStore, and I think just about everybody's heard about it. So in case you haven't, AutoStore, the way it works, you have teams of mobile robots that traverse an aluminium grid over the top of stacks of plastic bins or totes, whatever you call them. They're called bins in AutoStore, and your stock is stored in these bins. And what happens is when a bin is required to be picked from, teams of robots go and dig out the box that you need and take that box to a pick station. Meanwhile, that team will then put all of the bins back in the stack, crucially in the same order that it came out. So what effectively happens as the bins return from the pick station, you'll find that stock is shunted down, and you have this natural slotting where you have your, as Tony was calling it at the start, your C movers or your slow movers on the bottom, your medium movers or your B movers in the middle, and your A movers at the top. So it's very good from that point of view. Some benefits around AutoStore is there's no denser system out there than AutoStore, as you'll see on this video. Everything's compressed into one cube. It's incredibly scalable, because if you want to increase the amount of storage, you've just got to build more grid and add more bins. If you want to increase throughput again, like Carry Pick, you add more robots and you add more pick stations. And just like Carry Pick, the great thing about AutoStore is you can do this without affecting operation. So it's a nice solution to put in, then you can just grow it as your business changes. And we find nearly all of the AutoStores that we've implemented are extending. It's just a natural evolution of them, really. It's very modular, and once again, it's incredibly robust, because if robots go down, other robots take up the slack. There's no single point of failure. Give you an idea of a case study there. We've got a company in Germany called Computet Brack, as we'd call them, and they, one of the first ones with AutoStore, really, 2012, and they just started with 70 robots in a system. And they've gradually added robots as they need it to grow with their business. And once again, they found that during this COVID period, that they really needed additional volume in terms of throughput and also in storage. So in just 10 days, we supplied them with more bins, more grid to extend it, and another 30 robots, and have completely allowed them to capitalize on this increase and to match the customer expectations, as Tony was talking about there. So I've done about 10 minutes now. I'm just looking at my stop clock, Sue. Have I got 2 more minutes or 3 more minutes?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 more minutes.
Thank you very much. So one of the things that's a concern really for a lot of our customers is they don't have this infrastructure and they don't have this expertise in looking at it. So what we've done is looked at how this could work for people and come up with some standardized solutions. So this is some standard in both of these 2 technologies that can allow people to get in to the benefits of automation and grow them from that point on. And I'll share my screen, show you a bit about that. So what we've looked at is some standard solutions there with fairly rapid payback. So then there's funding models as well, where we've based it on, Tony in his first presentation spoke about lines in orders, but we've based it on order lines, which is really about a pick rate, and 400,000 and 2,000 order lines. And obviously I've not priced this because, you know, it's commercially sensitive, but the point is, by doing this standardized solution offering to people, we're able to have a much faster implementation time because it's known for us. Also, we can leverage the fact that it's standard, so offer customers a better price point for them, a more attractive price point, and also our time to go live for them can be dramatically reduced, and also our integration into their existing ERP or WMS is much more standardized being like this. So it's really nice that we can offer this, and we're seeing a lot of interest in that. But I think it's going to be a trend that you're going to see in automation. Is previously automation has been very bespoke, but I think it's going to come back to being standardized, and then these modern systems that you're seeing on here now, being able to flex them because they're agile, to be able to grow them and make them do what they want. Probably what I didn't say, and I just need to give a differentiation. Why would you choose AutoStore over Carry Pick, vice versa? Pretty simple. If an AutoStore bin is 650 by 450 by either 220, 330 and 425, if your stock fits in an auto bin or most of it, I think AutoStore is a superb solution, probably the best. If it's larger than that, or you have a variety of stock, including cases that you send out in whole cases, or smaller uglies hanging, then Carry Pick is a fantastic solution. But hopefully in those 13 minutes, I've given you a bit of an overview of 2 superb solutions types that you're going to be seeing and starting to dominate the market, I think, now. And I'll hand back.
Brilliant, thanks Adam. And it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, who is Serafina from Logistics Compare, who's going to give us some insights into what they've found through their system and platform over the last 6 months or so. So over to you, Serafina. Are you there?
I think you're on mute. Maybe that's what it is.
You're on mute, Serafina. If not, I've got a couple of questions. I'll do those and we'll bring Serafina in afterwards. So the first question comes from Tom. given the current uncertainty of customer behaviour, changing government restrictions and the financial impact on business, how do you think automation fits the prevailing climate? And then specifically, how flexible can an automated warehouse be to react to changing order patterns and volumes? And his secondary question is, if a business is sold, shut, or needs to move premises, how portable is the technology and the equipment? And he's asked that of both Tony Leach and Adam Fox.
Do you want me to? So actually, he's raised a superb point and slapped my wrist because I should have mentioned this.
Yeah.
Both of those solutions that I showed are very relocatable. So if you think about the carry pick autonomous mobile robots, it's not difficult at all to move those. You've only got to move the racks, move the robots, move the fences and pick stations. So that's very portable. And AutoStore is the same. AutoStore is a case that would need to build new grid and move grid as we do it, but it's just moving bins and robots. So they're incredibly relocatable compared to the old school. The picture I showed you of the Nestle site, obviously that is very bespoke to that operation. So it's not, doesn't have that portability and relocatability, but yeah, very relocatable.
Tony, maybe the PPE is a good example.
Yeah, I think a couple of things there in terms of sort of uncertainty of customer behaviour and government restrictions. Obviously, government restrictions are quite important because, you know, guidelines with social distancing and stuff like that. And I know that Gary mentioned it when he was talking that, you know, we have to now do things like split shifts because we can't have too many staff in the warehouse at the same time to meet those guidelines and to protect the staff. So, you know, in a way, automation can help with things like that because obviously, you know, we can improve social distancing through automation and not have to have so much emphasis on staff being so crowded together to a certain extent. And then obviously, you know, with PPE, yes, I think Adam made a really good point, is that one of the reasons we like the carry to pick robot is because we can add robots in. You know, obviously there is a glass ceiling as such, or you can only go so far, but we can add robots in. So having that modular really helps us to be able to start small in a way and then gradually kind of invest in that infrastructure and build robots in as we need them.
Brilliant. Okay, and I've got a question from Mark back. And that is, which area do the speakers see as the most important in terms of picking versus fulfillment versus distribution? Or is there a balance to consider if automating? And he's saying, assuming your warehouse is entirely manual presently, which area would the experts suggest is best to automate first?
Tony
Adam,
H, do you want to? I was just thinking Tony H, because he showed this analysis. That might be a good.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, I think picking is always the area that people look at and concentrate on, really. And you know, for delivery to e-commerce, I think is the biggest area where we're sort of seeing that as being the biggest growth and the biggest bang for your buck, basically. Consequently, that's where the investment's being made. That's my simple answer.
I think it's what gives the best ROI and operational benefit, really, isn't it? And often that is picking, very much so.
Just one other thing on that, Adam. I also see warehouses where one pick walk I saw was 1.5 miles. You know, whether it's with a tow picking pallet truck or whether it's on a low-level order picker, and the amount of time I see people actually moving but not picking, it's incredible in warehouses. So. Sorry, Adam. That was my point.
No, that's good. That's good.
Gary, what was your motivation? What was your first thing you thought of?
Well, it was definitely picking. Definitely picking.
Okay, that seems to be a consensus.
The other thing as well is that you'd also look at the replenishment of them picking modules as well. So we looked at the AutoStore and the carry pick solution. At some point, you need to feed the containers that are stored in those units. So I kind of think that might be a little bit less efficient, maybe, than if you're putting pallets into a warehouse and picking from pallets. So I guess our message is that you look at the overall operation, you might see a net loss in one area, but a significant gain in another, which is what I'd expect from the picking.
Okay, and Mark's come back with a question or a statement maybe more than a question, is it because labour for distribution centres is easier to manage than in a warehouse?
What was that question again, Sue?
Is it because labour for I assume it's a distribution, you put this, is easier to manage?
That's a good point.
I think you've stumped our panel there. At that point, I'm going to bring in Serafina, who is now
Lovely.
unmuted herself.
Okay. Okay, let's see this time. Let's see attempt number 2, if it works. Okay, can everybody see me?
Yeah.
We can see.
Yeah.
In my screen, yeah, most important. Hi, this is Serafina. I'm the CEO of Logistic Compare. Our business help clients to find the warehouse space easily, cost effectively. So what we're going to do today, I wanted to give you just a quick snapshot of the warehouse space trend in the UK. And then as we've been talking about automation, we are going to give you a quick, brief summary of what has been our experience during the coronavirus. So warehouse space trend, Q1 2020, there was 7.5 million square feet space available for letting, but due to the pandemic and the renowned demand for warehouse space, the space availability went 20% below the 5-year Q1 average. What is more important is what are the prospects for the future. So all the signs really are showing that there is an increase in demand space. And this is particularly driven by raising of inventories. In fact, we can see that already we've seen the logistics operators are already increasing the inventory at least 5 to 10% to protect themselves against any future supply chain disruption. The other reason for an increase in demand for space is reshoring of industry. While big companies like Apple and I don't know, Tesla, they are still keeping the manufacturing plants there in the Far East. What we are observing is that medium companies are reshoring the manufacturing, are bringing the manufacturing plants here in the UK, and that is done with the effort of really saving costs. The other element there is the increased e-commerce sale. Clearly, we have seen the first quarter, just for the first quarter 2020, there has been an increase of over 18% just here in the UK. So the forecast is there will be still a steady increase, maybe not the same percentage, but nevertheless still increasing. And that coupled with the fact that e-commerce already demand at least 3 times more space versus the brick and mortar retailer, this is definitely a recipe for an increase in demand space. And the last one is Brexit. Brexit is looming. Last year, Brexit equal, stockpiling. We had some of the major industries like perishable, pharma, car manufacturing, they were all stockpiling. And the reason why they were doing that, simply to have a buffer stock to be able to supply customers in case of delays at customs. So automation or not, I should say. The reason why I say that, because we had two different types of customers, I should say. We had the type of customer where they had containers coming into the port and looking for warehouse space. And that was their only focus. The focus was on non-selling, but was mainly on find a house for the goods. These are the retailers which had the shops were closed, and therefore their warehouse were already full of inventory, and therefore there was no house for the new stock. And so nowadays their dilemma is really deciding if they want to store these goods until next year, And that probably is the case with we've seen already in the news with Primark, or otherwise just selling at discount cost, which many other companies are following. But on the other side, we have seen a need for automation, where automation, I think, has been absolutely crucial into the, I would say, e-commerce side, where automation was mainly driven by 3 factors. One was speed. In fact, they wanted most of the time was 85% of the orders to go on next day delivery. Better utilization of the warehouse, which meant that some of the customers managed to save up to 40% versus the manual warehouse, which at the end, when you save in space, when you save on warehouse space, they will automatically translate in cost savings. And then the other thing that, the logical one is an improved accuracy for both inventory and fulfillment operations. So I want to just to give a bit of a small overview of what has been our experience.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Serafina.
Thank you.
One of the questions that I've got just before we wrap up, because I know we're running a few minutes over, sorry folks, is if we're going to do the automation route, which seems to be everybody is aiming at, and I've just seen the questions coming from Peter, I'll do that in a minute. Does that mean that we also need to think about AI and big data? And that's something that maybe we haven't looked at as much as an industry. Adam, have you looked at that at Swisslog?
Adam, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so if you look at our strapline, it's a data-driven warehouse solution, and Swisslog data drives everything, actually, rather than anecdote. And there's a lot of data analysis and AI. We have an all-encompassing software solution called Sync, which is both our WMS, it's WCS. It does all different things at all different levels, and more this is AI driven. So yeah, it's becoming more and more prevalent, the use of AI in automation, driving, prediction of things, etc. So yeah, definitely.
Tony or Gary, is that something you've looked at all?
We haven't looked at it too closely. We try to, I think sort of anticipatory shipping analytics is going to be really important in the future, especially for larger organizations that have multiple fulfillment centers, because, they can use big data and they can look at it and go, what stock do we need to hold where in the world or in the specific region, especially when you want to reduce lead times and local delivery. So, and improve customer experience. So I think it definitely will have a part in automation in the supply chain. And I think, as I said in my presentation, there's a big overlap between how you manage big data and the information within that, and then how you push that into the warehouse and then use that information, especially at product level and especially at sort of destination level, to say what are the trends and how can we apply, AI or whatever to be more intelligent and ultimately to restructure the way we work from a sort of product management perspective. So I do think that it's something that's happening, and Amazon are absolutely doing the sort of anticipatory shipping analytics all of the time with the infrastructure they have in terms of systems.
Brilliant. Gary, do you want to say anything?
Well, I wish I could, but it's actually above my level of knowledge. So, all I can say is we went to an incredible exhibition at the Barbican on AI. But in terms of us even getting to grips with robotics, it's beyond my level.
Brilliant. Okay. So Serafina, if you can make sure you're unmuted, I've got a question from Peter Wood for you. Serafina, assuming that the 7.5 square foot available in empty buildings, new or second-hand stock on the market, and subject to long-term lease terms, how much space is available within the 3PL market is ready to plug and play with material handling equipment, labour available, and pay as you go?
Well, it's a question of a million, that one there. One thing I'll say is that, first of all, 7.5 million was available at the beginning of when it was during the first quarter 2020, before the coronavirus. When the coronavirus happened, the availability went down over 20%. So the availability is not there anymore. But I would be happy to do a further search into this question and come back with a more detailed answer. So I'll let you know what percentage of this was dedicated to the 3PL.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Well, thank you all, and I'm sure that everybody listening today would like me to thank all our panelists for a very, very engaging and thought-provoking seminar. I'm sure it's actually got more questions than answers as well, so feel free to carry on the conversation with us via the LinkedIn page of Logistics Compare, and we can come back with some answers. So as I say, it's interactive, we want to engage with you, and look out for our next seminar, which will be coming soon. So thank you all very much, and have a good, wonderful, nice, warm afternoon. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
You too.
Thank you, everybody.
Martin, do you want to put up the poll results?